What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in on a beautiful Wednesday here on the network. Wasn't originally scheduling to do show today, as you can probably tell by the wardrobe. Had a daggum Sherpa hat on just a couple seconds ago. A little cold outside here in Northeast Georgia. Nonetheless, breaking news. The GOAT himself, Nick Saban, retiring after 297 career victories. And before you get too excited, Georgia fans, his last and final one came over you in the SEC championship game, unfortunately. But this is huge news for the world of college football and something that I think a lot of people were kind of like inkling at, right? I think for this show and for this network, the first time we kind of, hey, tinfoil hat on here was when the SEC network released that audio of Kirby Smart and Nick Saban talking before the SEC championship game. And it felt very much so like protege talking to whatever the word is for the person who proteges you, right? Your younger coach talking to your older coach who was very important in his formative years, basically having an opportunity to say goodbye, or at least having an opportunity to tell him, hey, enjoy this one. Enjoy this one because I know, you know, we all know probably the last one. And that's ultimately what it ended up being. Nick Saban, as announced today, that he is ultimately going to step down and retire from coaching in Alabama. These reports coming via a meeting that he had with Alabama football players within the last couple of hours. We'll get into, hey, who's going to take over this job? Hey, who are some immediate candidates? We'll get into some of that stuff as the day continues. I think the chat's hitting on a good one here. You know, when your defensive coordinator retires, you know, out of nowhere a couple of days ago, and out of nowhere, Kevin Steele's been around the game for about as long as Nick Saban has. But when your defensive coordinator kind of steps down and says, hey, I'm retiring from this joint, those things kind of set off alarm fires. But also, I think, again, the tea leaves for this, I mean, we knew it was going to happen eventually. I thought he was going to be like a lot of men of his generation, men of my father's generation, men of my father's father's generation who are like, retirement? Retirement is for the dead. Retirement is for the bored. Retirement is not for me. I thought that was going to be a lot of what was going to happen with Saban. I honestly thought Saban might croak one day coaching football. And honestly, if you told him that was the way it's going to go, I think he'd be okay with that. I don't know if Miss Terry would be, which I think may be part of the reason why we got the announcement that we did today. And they've already started, right? The Kiffin lane train rumors have already started to Tuscaloosa. And before we get to talking about that, because boy, if I were an Ole Miss booster, ooh, we'd be tight. We'd be so tight and so nervous right now because that money already gone. That money already in a collective bank, ready to pay them paychecks to those new transfer portal guys that they got in this year. So I would be super nervous if I were an Ole Miss booster because all the signs are there that might be the potential landing spot for you guys. But I just want to go over just a brief rundown of Nick Saban's career. Obviously, the multitude of championships. We talked about it. 297 career wins. Had a career win percentage of 80.6%. 80.6% of his football games he won. All right. And that's with a 58% win percentage at Michigan State. All right, so if you were to just take his Alabama records, if you were just to take his LSU records, you'd be looking at a plethora, okay, of national titles, and you'd be looking at what equates to about an 85% win percentage, 84% win percentage during his time at those particular universities. He won 87.7% of his football games at Alabama, and obviously spurned I don't know if there's a greater pro coaching tree, right? Maybe Parcells has got one. I feel like everybody that's ever, or maybe Tom Landry, right? It's all Tom Landry, and it's all, pretty much it. It's Tom Landry in the NFL, dates all the way to like dates to Belichick, has ties all the way to Parcells, has ties to all of them, all down to one tree. And if you look at the college coaching ranks right about now, I mean, shit, it's all one tree. It's all one tree, and then Dabo hanging out over there doing his own thing as a former receivers coach that won his way and talked his way to an interim job and then turned out to be one of the greatest college football coaches of all time. But outside of that, they all got a starting place, and most of them started in Tuscaloosa. Most of them started around Nick Saban, right? I mean, Georgia fans listening to this today, you know what it is. You know the deal. I mean, you were a carbon copy. I think that's what's made Kirby so unique compared to all of his other assistants. I think Kirby took the bones, took the structure of what Alabama was, and then incorporated his own identity. I think it's the only reason it's worked as well as it has, because people have tried to do the carbon copy thing, right? Jeremy Pruitt tried to do the carbon copy thing at Tennessee, found out that it was going to take a little bit more cheating than he seemed to be comfortable with, or the NCAA seemed to be comfortable with watching him do it, or do it before, 12 months before NIL came down. But nonetheless, the coaching tree for this guy, extremely, extremely long and lengthy. And part of that coaching tree, obviously, would be a guy by the name of Lane Kiffin. It would also be a guy by the name of Glenn Schumann. I think if you're in Tuscaloosa right now and if you're an Alabama fan, those are the two names that I'd be hollering at. I'd be like, hey, screaming from the mountaintops, those are the guys we need. We need those guys. Hey, is there a possibility that we could get Dan Lanning? No. I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you right now, probably not. All right, because here's the deal. If you're Dan Lanning, why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? You have created a top 5 monster in Oregon, and you have a top 2 booster, okay, in Phil Knight, all right? And the machine's already there, all right? And you're going to go be what? The next guy in line? I think that's the big overarching thing right here, right? Is who wants to be the next in line? Does Glenn Schumann want to be the next in line? Does Deion Sanders want to be the next guy in line in Tuscaloosa? I would be nervous if I were any of those fan bases that you might get plucked or your guy might get plucked. This would be the job. This would be the job for Glenn Schumann to just be like, hey, all right, it finally opened, right? That's his alma mater. I think a lot of people forget that. Maybe not a lot of Georgia fans, but I think a lot of people listening today that didn't know that would be a little bit shocked to know that Glenn Schumann's an Alabama grad, not a Georgia grad, that he left Alabama to come to Georgia for a bump in pay raise and a bump in opportunity. And that does not mean that's where his road ends, right? His road might end in Tuscaloosa, where he ultimately got a college degree. So you're going to get a lot of names thrown out in the mix here. I think if you're like Michigan, for example, ooh boy, does Jim Harbaugh's decision sound really, really interesting right about now. Because if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, Michigan's no longer big man on campus waiting, having the pick of the what's left of the litter to go out and fire or hire a head coach. You're almost guaranteed that if Jim Harbaugh leaves now, Michigan is the second best available job, and Michigan will ultimately probably hire Sharon Moore. Now, that might be the path anyways, but this just opened a monster. This has just opened a monster down there in Alabama. And though it's not like, Georgia has a better proximity to talent. Okay, Florida definitely has a better proximity to talent. Texas has a better proximity to talent. I would argue USC has a better proximity to talent. But I don't think there is a program in the world that cares and invests more into football than the state of Alabama. There is just not. I think there's more stuff to do in the state of Georgia. I think there's more places to throw your money at here in the state of Georgia. I think the same could be said about Florida. I think the same could be said about Texas, even though it's a pretty damn big deal in Texas. But so are other things out there in Texas. In Alabama, I don't give a shit about nothing but the Tide, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a saying for a reason. And that type of investment into your football program, it's invaluable for college football coaches who that's all they care about. They just care about how much money we ultimately throw into my program in order for us to go out and get some great, great talent. But yeah, man, I think there's a lot of – I think the people in the chat right now, most of you are Georgia fans. I think a lot of these, folks are confused with regards to their feelings. Are you happy if you're anyone outside of the Alabama fan base that this run is over? I would be happy. I would be happy if I were a fan elsewhere because, man, you can breathe at night. You can sleep at night. You can feel a little bit better about that monster out there on the SEC West not really existing anymore. That would make me feel a little bit better. But in terms of like, should you almost feel bad that you didn't beat him on his way out if you were someone else? Yeah, probably. Like, I don't know how Kirby Smart feels about today. I don't know. But then again, I don't know if Kirby Smart has feelings. The same thing with Sabin. I don't know if Sabin had feelings. I think Sabin is very much so a robot. I think Kirby Smart is very so much a robot. All of those things. You guys in the chat, you guys are not robots. And you probably have a lot of different feelings about this and how you feel about the monster of all of college football stepping down right now. There's also some people in the chat, and there's some people out there in the world that are going to throw up Dabo Swinney's name. And maybe in 5 years. I'm just agent hat. Let's go agent hat Brooks, not Rose Bowl hat Brooks, not greatest college football game of all time. For those listening to you on podcast, that's USC and Texas, not Georgia and Oklahoma, even though I do have that hat sitting over there. When you hear this news today, I don't even know where I was going with that. The Dabo Swinney thing. If I were to put my agent hat on here, I would say, Dabo, let's wait in line to be the guy after the guy. Let's not try to be the next guy in line. And that's kind of reasonable thinking. It's reasonable thinking, particularly if you have some type of call or feeling that you need to come back home and coach this football program, which, by the way, if y'all ain't noticed by now, that's how he's going to do it. If Dabo Swinney ever leaves Clemson, he's going to tell you that God called him to leave, and that's fine. God probably did call him to leave, but so did the Tuscaloosa, booster club. You know what I mean? So if it ever happens, that's going to be the reasoning for it. And I don't think the opportunity is now, right? I think the opportunity is in a little bit. If I were Alabama, and this is kind of sourced right here, I've always told you guys, if you want to know what's going to happen in the future world of college football coaching, don't talk to coordinators. Don't talk to current head coach. Hell, don't even talk to agents. If you want to know what's fixing to happen in, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, ask the highest ranked quarterback prospect you can find. Ask them. If they're in 22, or if they're in 2027 right now, if they're in 2028 right now, if they got a chooch on them, if they got offers, all right, I guarantee you that kid's dad has the dirt on what's fitting to go down. So guess who goes to the Elite 11 every single year? This guy. Guess who goes to the Elite 11 and guess who goes to the Under Armour events every single year? This guy. Guess who's been talking to the top 20, 25, 30 quarterbacks for the last 6 cycles? This guy. And guess who knew that something was coming down the pike? This guy. All right, and so did everybody else. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what I was told when they hired Tommy Rees to be the offensive coordinator was that might be the next one. That might be the next guy in line. We're going to shape this guy to not necessarily be the fall guy, but we're going to shape Tommy Rees to be the next guy to hang on for a year or so, prove that he's not the guy, let the moratorium of the retirement speeches end and come to a conclusion for Nick Saban, and then we'll go hire the guy, like the one. That was kind of the tea leaves given to a couple years ago, a couple times ago, right? A couple recruiting pastures ago. Whether or not that holds true, I don't know. I think right now, if you're Alabama, you try to go hire the biggest, best name available in college football, and I don't even know if there is one. I don't even know who it is. So now you got to poach. Now you got to go out there and you got to hope that you can pay Dan Lanning all of King Titus's gold to come coach your program. I don't know how much it's going to take. I would imagine it's going to take a bunch. To leave machines that are already created to go elsewhere and try to start anew. I don't know what it would cost for Dan Lanning, but I heard some of them numbers being rumored around Kirby Smart when Texas A&M thought they had a chance to at least get on the phone with Jimmy Sexton. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So yeah, I don't really know. I'm sitting here right now as the news broke and as we got almost 600 people hanging out here in the chat, I have no idea who they hire. I think they maybe promote Tommy Rees and then try to hire the next big name or try to poach the next big name. But I know it's not going to be Kirby Smart. I know, or at least I think for a good part of me, it's probably not going to be Dabo Swinney. So that circles a lot of other names like Glenn Schumann, names like Deion Sanders, names like Dan Lanning, names like Caleb DeBoer, right? These are the names that I would be circling if I were Alabama and if I were in Tuscaloosa. Let me check some of these text messages because you never know what exactly it might come in here. Let's see here. Sources saying Lane Train's probably going to get it. All right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about if it is Lane Kiffin. Man, if you're an Ole Miss booster and you've been sitting on some old money since the emancipation. Since you know when, if you've been sitting on some old money forever and you finally came up on that old money to keep Jackson Dart around and to see Walter Nolan come to town, only for your head football coach to lose, whew, boy, would that be unfortunate. Unfortunate for you if that were to be the case. And it sounds like it, at least could very much so on the table. Look, guys, instead of rambling and trying to figure out what's actually going to happen, I'm going to end today's broadcast right here. But you know what? You build the studio for a reason, right? For when breaking news happens, you can run down into your mom's basement and you can get online and you can tell all your friends in the world, hey, all 12 of you that are watching, Nick Saban just retired. Holy shit, breaking water dam moment here in college football. Hey, I love you. I appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock with the homies.